Almost everybody knows of Maleficent and how she is the wicked enchantress who, through her rage, cursed Aurora into an eternal slumber only to be broken by a kiss from her betrothed, Prince Phillip. But did you know that before the events of Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent was once a fairy? This is something we find out in her own movie. That's right, Maleficent was such an interesting antagonist that she even received her own live-action prequel film that gave the audience more insight as to who she was as a person. We got to learn about how she was in fact betrayed by love and made bitter by it, and the fact that, up until her wings were stolen from her, Maleficent had spent her life as a fairy. All of this pain and suffering that she went through really explains her actions in the original Disney classic. After being betrayed and stolen from, it just seemed like things began to pile up for Maleficent. Now, all of a sudden, she didn't get invited to an event that everyone, and I mean everyone, was invited to. It's no wonder she wigged out and ended up placing a curse on Aurora. Though it wasn't her fault, Maleficent felt this was the best way to punish the king and queen who had rudely omitted her from the guest list. Her anger wasn't lost on anyone at the party, though. Everyone, including the three fairies, were terrified of what else she might do. And it's pretty obvious as to why Maleficent felt the need to lash out. But what if I told you there was more to it? A theory suggests that on top of all of the trials and tribulations that Maleficent had gone through in her life, she also had another reason to feel so hurt by being left out of the celebration. Some people are beginning to think that Maleficent actually helped the king and queen conceive Aurora, and being left out of her birth celebration was almost like a lack of appreciation and recognition for all that she had done. Not only for the family, but also the entire kingdom. Now, before we go any further, if you are a fan of all things Disney and Pixar, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button to ensure you don't miss any of our magical uploads. Now, taking a look at the beginning of the film, we learn a very important thing that most people tend to overlook. It's mentioned that the king and queen have been trying to have a child, but had been struggling for some time. While some say that conceiving Princess Aurora just took time and they were eventually able to succeed at it the natural way, the theory suggests a more logical explanation, rather than it just being a coincidental miracle. Instead, the theory explains that the king and queen sought some magical assistance from, perhaps, a forest fairy that was well versed in witchcraft. In this case, they happened to turn to Maleficent, who, for some reason, agreed to help. But then the question becomes, why would Maleficent help King Stefan and Queen Leia? Well, there are two possible reasons that have to deal with Maleficent's history and relationship with both the king and queen. As we know from her live-action remake, King Stefan and Maleficent used to be lovers when they were younger, except Maleficent happened to be the one who was more into the relationship than King Stefan. We come to find out in that movie that not only did King Stefan lead her on from a kiss, but he also stole her wings, leading us to further question, why would she help him conceive a child, let alone with another woman? Well, as we know, Maleficent had very deep feelings for the king, even after he betrayed her and stole from her. This particular reason of providing her assistance was probably out of the desire to be loved by the king, to help the man she had deep feelings for, even though he wanted a baby with someone else. I mean, this is what unhealthy relationships look like in real life, too, where one person gives too much of themselves to another person who doesn't appreciate their giving or even want it in the first place. An insecurity that lies in giving until the other notices. We definitely see a little of that in her live-action remake at the beginning. A little girl who just wanted to be loved and accepted in return by the man she had feelings for. The other theory that supports this idea of why Maleficent would help the king and queen in the first place actually has us looking at the relationship between Maleficent and the queen herself. Not much is mentioned about the queen in the films, nor do we ever really hear about the relationship between her and Maleficent at all. But there's a very subtle detail at the beginning of the animated film that gives a huge clue as to how the two know each other. It was during Aurora's celebration that Maleficent showed up and left everybody shocked. King Stefan seemed enraged and angered by her presence, like he hadn't actually expected her to make an appearance, and even the good fairies told Maleficent that she wasn't invited. Everyone seemed to be in a minor state of shock during Maleficent's arrival, except Queen Leia. In fact, throughout most of the scene, she seemed rather calm and poised, and more so annoyed rather than fearful or angry, until her baby was threatened, that is. But the way she acted almost seemed like she expected Maleficent's arrival, and appeared to be rather comfortable in the presence of Maleficent, which is quite odd when you think about it. And in the same scene, we actually get a better look at the physical similarities between Maleficent and Queen Leia. Have you ever noticed how similar their facial shape and eyes are? Even their mouth and overall stature. It's almost uncanny, leading us to believe that the two are actually sisters. Although a crazy idea at first, it actually supports a lot of the other minor details in the film too. I mean, why else would Maleficent agree to help her ex, who hurt her so badly, conceive a child with another woman. Maybe it was because she was doing it as a favor for her sister, whom she originally harbored no ill will for, and had nothing to do with King Stefan at all. This would also explain why Maleficent opted out of the death option when it came to cursing baby Aurora, by simply making Aurora fall asleep after pricking her finger on her 16th birthday. Because Princess Aurora was technically her family, her niece, Maleficent wasn't able to bring herself to actually kill her. She was simply teaching her ex-lover the pain of unrequited love without hurting her sister's child. Her curse was never out of hatred or anything. It was more so catalyzed by not being invited to baby Aurora's birth celebration, the baby she helped conceive despite past issues with the king, coupled with the fact that Queen Leia was her actual sister. A double betrayal, if you will. Maleficent had been taken advantage of one too many times and was tired of letting it go unanswered. There's one more darker theory out there that's important to mention, although it isn't supported by Maleficent's live-action film. And that is, quite simply, Maleficent had planned to get rid of the child all along. She had only agreed to help the king and queen conceive in the first place as a way to use Princess Aurora as a pawn to get revenge on Stefan for all that he had done to her, to grace them with a child only so that she could take the baby away from them right after. How crazy and dark would that be? There's no question that Maleficent is one of Disney's more sinister villains, but she is also one of the ones with a more sympathetic backstory. It's really easy to see how she became the evil enchantress that we know her as. But what do you think? Was Maleficent's curse justified after all that King Stefan had put her through? And do you think that the Queen and Maleficent were actually sisters? Be sure to let us know. That's all, Disney fans. Let us know what you thought of this video in the comments, and like and subscribe for more magically packed videos.